The cargo bay was freezing, cold air drifting in from the open loading doors, metal floors echoing under heavy boots. Evan, a young human engineer, walked in holding a small crate of tools, his breath turning to white mist. He had been working on repairing the landing clamps all morning, but now he needed spare parts. He stopped when he saw her. She was sitting alone on the floor near the wall, knees pulled tightly to her chest. Her thin arms wrapped around herself, her skin was pale blue and almost glowing faintly in the dim light. She wore only a ragged shirt and torn trousers, no shoes. Her small bare feet pressed against the cold metal, her head lifted slowly, large dark eyes fixing on him. She was shivering so hard that her teeth clicked together. Around them, other dock workers passed by without even looking. Some glanced at her and smirked. One alien with green scales muttered to his friend. Street stray let her freeze. They laughed and kept walking. Evan frowned. He had seen poverty on many stations, but there was something different here, something wrong as he stepped closer. The girl's eyes widened. She pushed herself up on trembling legs and took 2 quick steps forward. Then she stumbled and fell against his chest, her small hands gripping his jacket tightly. Her body was ice cold, but the moment she touched him, Evan felt a strange warmth spreading in too. His chest, like a slow-burning fire. Hey, easy, he said softly, steadying her. He could feel her shaking against him. You're freezing. She looked up at him, lips barely moving, whispering something in a language he didn't know. His wristband. Translator crackled and gave a rough translation. Mine now. Safe now. Evan blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly, from the corner of his eye. He saw an older alien trader pause, staring at them with wide eyes. The man stepped forward. Quickly, you fool, he hissed. Do you know what you've done? Evan shook his head. She's just cold. I'm helping her. The trader's voice dropped lower. That's not helping. That's a bonding ritual for her kind. You touch them like that. You let them cling to your warmth. It marks you, Evan. Looked down and for the first time noticed a faint glowing mark on the side of her neck. It pulsed slowly, almost in rhythm with his own heartbeat. What does that mean? He asked. It means, the trader said grimly, her life is tied to yours now. If you leave her, she will weaken and die. If she dies, you will feel it like losing your own blood. The girl didn't let go. She pressed herself closer, as if afraid someone would pull her away. Other workers in the bay began whispering. Watching with interest and unease, some shook their heads. Others gave knowing looks. Evan sighed and crouched, wrapping his jacket around her small frame. What's your name? He asked. She only stared, her lips trembling. Then she whispered again. Safe now. As if that was all that mattered, the trader shook his head, muttering something about foolish humans. Then walked away. Evan stood, holding her steady. Come on, let's get you somewhere warm, he said. She didn't resist, her small hand gripping his firmly as they walked through the corridor toward his cabin. Evan couldn't shake the feeling that something more had just happened. Something far bigger than simply helping a freezing child. The strange warmth in his chest hadn't faded. In fact, it seemed to grow with every step she took beside him. When they reached his small cabin, he let her inside, closing the door behind them. The hum of the heater filled the room. She moved toward the corner near the heating vent, curling up there instantly, her eyes never leaving him. Evan poured some hot water into a cup and handed it to her. She took it carefully, holding it with both hands, her thin fingers wrapped tightly around the steam. For a while, they sat in silence, the warmth of the heater slowly driving the cold from her body. But in Evan's mind, the trader's words echoed. Bonding ritual, tied lives can't be undone. He didn't know if it was true or just some alien superstition, but when he looked at her, when he saw the way she watched him like he was her only light in a dark place, he knew one thing. whatever had just started between them. He couldn't walk away now. Outside his cabin door, footsteps passed by, voices murmuring, "The station." Never slept, but inside, in this small space, it felt like the galaxy had shrunk down to just two people. One human. And one tiny alien who had chosen him for reasons he didn't yet understand. And somewhere, deep inside, a quiet warning began to take shape. If she belonged to someone else before, they would come looking, and they wouldn't ask nicely. Evan woke to the sound of faint tapping. It wasn't the heavy clang of machinery or the deep thrum of the station's reactors. This was soft, quick, and close. He opened his eyes and found the tiny alien girl crouched beside the door, her head tilted, her ear pressed against the metal. She glanced at him and whispered, "They talk about us." He sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes. "Who?" She hugged her knees and whispered again, "The bad ones," before Evan could ask more. The station's hallway speakers crackled to life. An announcement in a harsh alien language echoed through the corridor. His translator fed him the meaning. Cargo bay security inspection in progress. All residents to remain in quarters unless called. The girl shivered even though the cabin was warm, her eyes darting toward the door. Evan stood, moving to check the lock. He didn't trust station security, especially after the traitor's warning yesterday. He'd barely touched the panel when heavy footsteps stopped outside, followed by a slow knock 3 times. A deep voice called through. "Open the door." Human Evan's muscles tensed. "What do you want?" He called back. The voice replied, "You have something that belongs to us." The girl's grip tightened on his arm, her small fingers digging into his sleeve. She shook her head violently. Evan took a breath. "You've got the wrong room." The voice outside chuckled, low and cold. "No mistake. Her scent is here. You hand her over now, or we take her." He glanced at the girl. She was trembling, her lips forming silent words. Then she whispered, "If they take me, I break." That word made something twist in Evan's chest. It wasn't just fear in her voice, it was final. Like she wouldn't come back if they got her. Not happening. Evan called back, "She's." Under human protection, there was silence outside. Then a slow, mocking laugh. "Protection. From you? We'll see." The footsteps faded, but the girl didn't relax. "They will come back," she said quietly, with more teeth. Evan knew she was right. He sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing the back of his neck. He wasn't a soldier. He was an engineer. He fixed things, not fought people. But right now, he felt like the only thing standing between her and whatever hell those men wanted. She crawled closer to him, sitting cross-legged on the floor, her eyes never blinking as she spoke. "You should let me go. Then they won't hurt you." Evan shook his head. "Not happening." She tilted her head. "Why?" "I am trouble." He looked at her for a long moment. "Because someone has to care." Her eyes softened, and for a moment the constant tension in her shoulders eased. The rest of the day passed slowly, every sound in the hallway making them both glance toward the door. Evan worked on a small repair job at his desk while she stayed curled in the corner, her eyes flicking between the heater and him. That strange warmth in his chest had not faded. Since yesterday, in fact, it felt like it had sunk deeper, as if some invisible thread connected them now. Near evening, the door alarm chimed again. This time, it was a neighbor, a lanky human named Bren. Bren stepped inside and shut the door quickly, his face pale. "You've got a problem," Bren said, without greeting. "Word is, the Korath crew has put a claim on your little blue stray. They're offering credits to anyone who helps." "Them take her?" Evan's jaw tightened. "How long do we have?" Bren shrugged. "Not long. Maybe hours, maybe minutes. You need to disappear before they make their move." The girl stood and moved closer, standing half behind Evan like a shadow, her small hand gripping the back of his shirt. "Where can we go?" Evan asked. Bren hesitated. I know a guy who owes me. Runs an old cargo hauler in the maintenance docks. Not fast. But it can get you off station without going through the main gates. Evan nodded slowly. I'll take it. Bren glanced at the girl and lowered his voice. You sure about this? The Korath don't stop chasing once they start. Evan didn't even pause. I'm sure. Bren sighed. Then move fast and keep the lights low. They've got eyes everywhere. After Bren left, Evan grabbed his small toolkit, some rations, and a thermal blanket. The girl stood silently by the door, watching him pack. When he met her gaze, she said softly, If you keep me, you will be hunted. Evan zipped the bag shut. Then we run faster than they hunt. A small smile flickered at the corner of her mouth, the first he'd seen. As they stepped into the dim hallway, Evan kept her close, his eyes scanning every shadow, every passing figure somewhere in the distance. A deep voice laughed, the same laugh from outside his door earlier, and Evan knew without a doubt that their time on this station was running out. The maintenance docks were quiet, too quiet. Most of the station's noise, the clanging of cargo lifts, the murmur of traders, the hiss of steam vents faded here into a kind of hollow stillness. The walls dripped with condensation, and the air smelled faintly of oil and cold metal. Evan led the tiny alien girl through the shadows, his bag slung over one shoulder, her small hand gripping his jacket tightly. They stopped in front of an old cargo hauler tucked behind two large fuel tanks, its paint peeling, its hull patched. In too many places to count, Bren's friend was already there. A short, broad alien with skin like rusted copper. His 4 eyes blinked in pairs as he looked them over. This is her. The alien asked in a low voice. Evan nodded. We just need to get off the station. Fast, the alien grunted. Fast is not what this ship does, but quiet. Quiet, I can do. He lowered the loading ramp and Evan led the girl inside, the ship's interior smelled faintly of dust and something metallic. Once the door sealed behind them, the girl finally spoke. Her voice so soft, it almost got lost in the hum of the ship's systems. My name is Leora. Evan glanced at her. Leora, all right, that's a good start. She tilted her head, watching his face carefully. You want to know why they chase? Me. Evan hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, I think I need to know. She sat down on one of the narrow benches, pulling her knees up again. It seemed like her favorite way to sit, as if curling into herself made her feel safer. My people, she began slowly, are not many now. Long ago, we had big worlds, warm suns, oceans that sang. But the Korath came. They took the strong ones for war, the clever ones for building, their weapons and the rest. They left in the cold. Her voice wavered, and for a moment she looked far away, as if she could see those warm suns again, only to watch them fade. They put us in places like this station, she continued. The cold makes us weak. It slows our hearts, and then we stop. Evan felt his chest tighten, so the shivering it kills. She said simply, slow but certain. Unless we find warmth, warmth is life for us. But not just from heat vents or blankets. It must be from a living one. Evan's brow furrowed. That's why yes, she interrupted softly. When I touched you, I made the bond. It is not an accident. It is not innocent. She looked down, her hands curling into fists. It ties me to you. I take your warmth, your strength. In return, I give you mine. But if you leave me, it breaks me, and the bond hurts you too. Evan leaned against the wall, the traitor's warning replaying in his head, now confirmed by the girl herself. So it's not just survival, he said. It's permanent. She nodded, until one of us is gone. For a while, neither of them spoke. The hum of the cargo hauler filled the silence. Evan finally said, You could have bonded with anyone on that deck yesterday. Why me? Her eyes met his. Steady now, because you looked at me. Not past me, not through me. You saw me. That simple truth hit him harder than he expected. He wasn't sure if it was the bond or just the honesty in her voice, but it made him want. To protect her even more, the pilot's voice called from the front. Strap in, we're leaving. Evan sat beside Leora, buckling the old harness. The ship's engines rumbled to life, vibrating through the floor. But just as the hauler began to lift from the dock, a deep metallic clang echoed from outside. Then another. Sharper sound, the hiss of a cutting torch. They found us. Leora whispered, her pupils narrowing. Evan unbuckled and ran to the small porthole. Shapes moved in the shadows. 3 Korath figures, armored and armed, trying to cut through the docking clamps. The pilot cursed in his own language, slamming. Controls, hold tight. The ship jerked violently as the engines roared. The clamps gave way with a screech of tearing metal. One of the Korath stumbled backward. Waving his weapon, they shot into open space, the station's lights shrinking behind them. Evan sank back. Into his seat, his heart pounding. Leora's small hand found his, her grip warm now, steady. We will not be safe long, she said quietly. They can follow my scent across the stars. Evan didn't know how, but he believed her, and for the first time, he realized running might not be enough. They would have to fight back, sooner or later. Asterisk, the old cargo hauler drifted through the black, its engines humming low to avoid detection for hours. The stars outside the viewport passed like cold sparks in an endless sea. Evan sat in the co-pilot seat, eyes scanning the navigation screen. Leora sat behind him, wrapped in the thermal blanket, her knees drawn up under. Her chin, the pilot, whose name Evan had learned was Krent, kept his voice low. We'll take the shadow lane through the asteroid belt. Korath patrols don't risk those rocks unless they have to. Evan nodded, but his mind kept circling back to the 3 armored figures they'd seen in the docks. If they were determined enough to cut through clamps, they wouldn't give up. Now, the hum of the ship was broken by a sudden ping from the scanner. Krent's eyes narrowed. Incoming signal. Not friendly. Evan leaned forward. How close? Krent tapped a few controls. Too close. They've been following since we left the station. They've been matching our drift pattern. Hiding in our blind spot, Leora's head snapped up, her voice sharp. Karaf. Evan felt a cold knot form in his stomach. Can we outrun them? Krent shook his head. Not in this hauler. She's built for hiding, not running. Before Evan could answer, the cum crackled to life. A deep, mocking voice filled the cabin. Little human, you have something of ours. Hand over the girl. And you may live. Leora flinched at the sound, pressing back into her seat. Her eyes locked on the floor. Evan grabbed the cum, his voice steady. She's not yours. The voice laughed, slow and cold. Everything is ours if we decide it. Is last chance human? Evan muted the channel and looked at Krent. Options. Krent's mouth pulled tight. 1. We hide in the asteroid field and pray they lose us. 2. We fight. Leora stood, the blanket slipping from her shoulders. Her small hands clenched into fists. If they catch me, they will not kill me. They will keep me, use me, break me. Then they will come for you. Her voice didn't shake this time. It was a hard truth. Evan looked at her. Then at Krent. We fight. Krent raised a brow. With what? This ship barely has teeth. Evan opened his toolkit, pulling out a cluster of parts. Maybe not teeth, but I can give her a bite, while Krent kept their drift pattern unpredictable. Evan worked in the small maintenance bay, fitting together a crude energy pulse device from spare capacitors and shield emitters. Leora stayed close, handing him tools without needing to be asked. Her eyes followed every move, and finally she spoke. You are not like the others. Evan glanced up. Others. Humans I've seen before, she said softly. They look away when trouble comes. You look at it and step forward. He didn't know how to answer that, so he kept working. Minutes later, the Koroth ship appeared on the scanner again, moving. In from above, their weapons already charging, Evan grabbed the device. A bundle of wires and metal plates. Krent, get me close to their starboard flank. Krent swore under his breath, but swung the hauler toward the massive, dark shape of the enemy ship. Their hull lights glowing faintly, like eyes in the dark. As they closed the gap, Evan moved to the airlock. Sealing himself inside, he locked the device to the outer hull, a magnetic clamp holding it in place. He hit the trigger and braced. A blinding pulse of blue-white energy rippled outward. The Koroth ship's lights flickered. Its engines coughed, and for a few precious seconds it drifted powerless. Krent didn't waste them. He pushed the hauler hard toward the asteroid field, weaving between massive spinning rocks. Their surfaces scarred from centuries of impacts. Evan stumbled back into the cabin, breathless. Leora grabbed his arm. Her eyes wide. They will follow again, but now they will hate you more. Evan gave a short, tired laugh. Good, maybe that'll keep them motivated. But even as he said it, he knew she was right. They weren't just chasing her anymore. They were chasing him too, and he had just made it personal. Somewhere behind them, engines flared to life. The asteroid field was not silent. From a distance, it looked like a slow, frozen dance of rock and shadow. But once inside, the ship was surrounded by the constant grind and scrape of stone against stone, the low rumble of colliding fragments, and the eerie hiss of dust drifting through space like smoke. Krent's hands were tight on the controls, guiding the old cargo hauler between spinning boulders the size of houses, every movement careful. One wrong turn and we're paced, he muttered. Evan kept his eyes on the scanner, the Koroth. Ships still behind us, but they're keeping their distance. Leora moved closer to the viewport, her gaze fixed on the rocks outside. They are afraid, she said quietly. Evan frowned. Afraid of what? It's just rock. She shook her head slowly, not just rock. There are things here. Before he could ask, a sudden thud rattled the hull. Followed by a long scraping sound, Krent swore. We've got something stuck to us. Evan ran to the side viewport and froze. A massive shape clung to the side of the hauler, not metal, not stone, but something alive. Its body, a dark, mottled gray that blended perfectly with the asteroids. Dozens of spiny legs gripped the hull, and a long, flexible mouth probed at the seams of the metal. What is that? Evan asked. Leora's eyes narrowed. A void leech, she whispered. They hide in the rocks and feed on ships. It will call others, as if on cue. The scanner pinged again. Smaller shapes moving toward them from all directions. Krent's voice was tight. We can't fight those and the Koroth at the same time. Evan grabbed his toolkit. Then we get rid of them before the Koroth shows up. He and Leora headed to the maintenance bay, where the hull access controls were. As they moved, she kept glancing at him. You should not open the outer hatch while in the field. The leeches are fast. They can get inside. Evan checked the seals on the outer release system. Then, I won't open it wide, just enough to shock it off. He rerouted power from the secondary systems to the hull plating, converting the surface into a massive electric grid when he hit the switch. The ship shuddered with a discharge. A deep, muffled shriek echoed through the metal and the shadow. Outside peeled away, drifting into the dark, its legs curling inward. The scanner showed the smaller shapes slowing, then retreating. Leora let out a slow breath. They will not return soon. Evan wiped his hands. Good. Now let's make sure the Koroth don't either. They returned to the cockpit. Krent glanced over his shoulder. Koroth ships moving in again. Looks like they thought the leeches would finish us. Evan studied the asteroid map on the screen, his eyes landing on a narrow gap ahead. What's that? Krent squinted. That's a hollow drift, an open tunnel through the rocks, dangerous as hell. Debris moves through there like knives. Evan grinned. Perfect. Krent muttered something unkind in his language, but steered toward it. The hauler slipped into the narrow space. Jagged walls rushing past just meters away. Chunks of rock shot through the tunnel like bullets. Forcing Krent to weave and dodge, the Korath ship followed. But their larger hull scraped the edges, sending fragments spinning into their own shields. Halfway through, Evan triggered the pulse device again, the same one he'd used earlier. The flash of energy disrupted the Korath sensors, blinding. They clipped an incoming rock, their shields flaring, and fell back. By the time the hauler emerged into open space on the far side, the Korath ship was nowhere in sight. Krent eased the throttle. For now, you're clear, Evan let out. A long breath and sank into the co-pilot seat. Leora sat beside him, her blanket slipping from her shoulders. You could have left me, she said quietly. You could have given me to them and walked away. Evan looked at her. Yeah, I could have. But then I wouldn't be able to look at myself again. Her gaze softened, and for a moment, the bond between them felt almost visible, like a faint glow in the air. But even in that quiet, Evan knew this wasn't over. The Korath wouldn't stop, and sooner or later, they'd have to face them again, this time on Evan's terms. The cargo hauler floated in the quiet black of deep space for the first time. In hours, there was no blip on the scanner, no shadow in the rear view. Krent kept the engines low to stay off long-range sensors. Evan sat at the co-pilot station, his shoulders finally relaxing. Leora rested beside him, eyes half closed under the warm blanket, but peace never lasted long. Not out here. The scanner gave a single sharp ping. Then another. Evan leaned forward, his stomach sinking, their back. Krent cursed under his breath. Korath ship. Closing fast from the starboard side. How the hell did they find us so soon? Leora sat up, her voice flat. They always find me. Evan glanced at her. How? She hesitated, then pulled the blanket tighter. The bond. It is not only warmth, it is a thread. They can follow it if they know how. They took it from my family before. Evan's jaw tightened. So breaking it isn't an option. She shook her head. No, breaking it kills. Krent swung the hauler around, pushing the engines harder. We can't outrun them, but maybe we can make them miss their shot through the viewport. A glittering haze of light appeared ahead. It shimmered and shifted like a silver curtain in the dark. Evan frowned. What's that? Krent's voice was tense. Grav mist, particles pulled from a shattered moon. Beautiful to look at, deadly to fly through. Sensors can't read it. Engines choke in it. But if we cut power and drift, maybe they'll lose us before Evan could agree. The Korath ship burst into view behind them, its black hull lit by streaks of red weapon fire. Bolts scorched past the hauler, one striking close enough to rattle the deck. Krent slammed the throttle, sending them into the edge of the mist. At once, the ship's lights dimmed as particles scraped along the hull. The view outside became a swirling cloud of silver and black. The Korath followed, their bigger engines roaring. Evan could hear the deep rumble, even through the vacuum. They won't stop, Leora said quietly, her eyes fixed on the haze outside. They won't give up until I am theirs. Evan opened his mouth to reply, but Leora suddenly unbuckled her seatbelt and stood, her face calm but her eyes glowing faintly. Leora, what are you doing? Evan asked. She looked at him. Something I have not done since before the cold took my home. She walked to the center of the cabin, placing both hands on the metal floor. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a faint vibration ran through the ship. The air felt warmer. The silver mist outside seemed to shift and coil as if alive. Evan stared. What is that? Leora's voice was steady. My people were not only bound by warmth, we could call the heat of the void, the life hidden in dead space. I can wake it. Through the swirling haze, faint shapes began to form. Not ships, not rocks, but living creatures, long, ribbon-like beings with translucent skin, glowing veins running through them like rivers of fire. They moved gracefully. But there was power in their motion. The Korath ship fired, beams of red energy slicing into the mist. But the creatures twisted away, their glowing eyes locking onto the intruder. They do not like hunters, Leora whispered. One of the creatures coiled around the Korath ship, its glowing body pressing tight. The larger vessel jolted as if caught in a net. Krent's jaw dropped. I've never seen anything like that. Evan kept his eyes on Leora. You? Called them. She didn't answer. Her focus was locked on the creatures. Her breath slow and deep. Another ribbon-like being struck, its glowing tendrils wrapping around the Korath's engines. The ship's lights flickered violently, then went dark. They will not be able to follow now, Leora said softly, finally sinking back into her seat, her glow fading. Evan reached over, steadying her. That was incredible. She shook her head. It was dangerous. Calling them costs strength. If I do it too often, the bond will weaken me. And you, Krent. Eased the hauler out of the mist. Engines humming quietly again. We're clear. For now, Evan glanced at Leora. Then we make the most of it. We find somewhere safe before they recover. But in the back of his mind, he knew the Korath wouldn't give up for long, and next time, they might come with something even the creatures couldn't stop. The old cargo hauler drifted into the shadow of a small frozen moon. Its surface cracked like old glass. Geysers of ice venting into space. Krent powered down everything but life support. Hiding them from long-range scans, Evan sat at the navigation console. Leora wrapped in her blanket beside him, but her eyes were alert. Scanning the darkness beyond the viewport. They are coming, she said quietly. Evan looked at the scanner. Nothing yet, just empty black. You're sure? She nodded. The bond hums differently when danger is close. I can feel them, Krent muttered. Then we don't have much time. Evan turned to Leora. If we run again, we'll just keep running forever. Sooner or later, they'll catch us. Maybe it's time we stop running. Her head tilted. You mean fight? He nodded. Yeah, but we can't win head-on, so we make them think we're weak. We make them come close. And then we hit them where it hurts. Krent gave a slow grin. That I can work with. The plan came together fast. Krent would use the moon's geysers to mask their heat signature. Evan would reroute the ship's power to a single burst trap. And Leora. She would do what only she could as they worked. Evan glanced at her. You sure you can handle this? She met his gaze without flinching. If we win, we are free. If we lose, they take me. There is no middle path. An hour later, the trap was set. The hauler sat still on the far side of the moon, looking abandoned. Its lights dim, its engines cold. The Korath ship emerged from the black like a predator from the deep, its black armor gleaming under the distant starlight. Weapons charged. But holding fire, they wanted to take Leora alive. Evan waited until they were almost within touching distance, then gave the signal. Krent triggered the geysers. Huge plumes of frozen vapor erupting upward. The sudden burst of movement blinded the Korath's targeting sensors for a heartbeat. And that was all they needed. Evan hit the release, sending a cloud of magnetized shrapnel from the moon's surface straight into the Korath's forward shields. The shards tore into the outer hull like claws. The enemy ships staggered in space. But they were still moving, still dangerous. There comes flared to life with the cold, familiar voice. Little human, clever. But not enough. Evan's jaw clenched. Leora. Now, she stepped forward. Her blanket falling away, her eyes glowing brighter than Evan had ever seen. The bond between them flared, a rush of heat flooding his chest. He could feel her heartbeat in his own veins. She placed both hands on the deck, and the space between the hauler and the Korath ship shimmered. The same ribbon-like creatures from the Grav mist appeared, but this time more of them. Dozens, their glowing bodies twisting and turning with purpose. They moved like a living net wrapping around the Korath ship, their glowing veins pulsing in rhythm with Leora's own light. The Korath fired, beams of energy slicing through the dark. But the creatures absorbed the heat, feeding on it, growing brighter. Evan felt Leora's strength pouring into them, but also felt it draining her, her body shaking, her breathing ragged. He knelt beside her, holding her steady. "You're not doing this alone." He placed his hands over hers, letting the bond carry some of his own strength into her. The warmth between them became almost unbearable, but the glow in her eyes steadied. The creatures tightened their grip, crushing parts of the Korath hull, sparks flaring from deep gashes. Systems shutting down one by one, finally, with a soundless burst of light. The Korath ship's engines failed completely. It drifted powerless, trapped in the creature's coils. Leora exhaled slowly, her glow fading. The creatures released the broken ship and drifted away into the void, leaving only silence. Krent let out a low whistle, I think. "You just ended your hunt." Evan helped Leora to her seat, wrapping the blanket around her again. "They won't be back," he said quietly. "Not after this." She looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "You stayed. You fought. And now I am warm." He smiled faintly. "And you're stuck with me." Her lips curved into the smallest smile, forever, outside the viewport. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, and for the first time since this began, Evan felt like they weren't just running anymore, they were free.